Why don't your builds look like your references? This is something that I used to ask myself a lot before I actually started to look more into it. So, as you can see here, this is Byzantine architecture. At least, my best approximation of it. As you can see, it has the roofs, the overhang, and even the attempt at a dome. However, I would not have gotten this far if I did not know how to use my references properly. So in this video, I'm going to do my best to try and teach you how to make your build look the most like your references while not having to build something gigantic. As you can see here, I have what I pulled up to use as my references. Byzantine, right there, right? So, as you can see, this has a lot of the different shapes you're going to need. So, first things first, there might be parts that you don't need. You want to know what you're going to do with those parts? You're going to ignore them. You don't need them. However, parts like this might be useful when playing in block games like Minecraft because everything's made out of blocks. Kind of hard to do circles and domes. So, what I mainly used, let me get rid of the eraser, is this image and these images. I also use this one for cohesiveness. So, looking at this, it's a little bit hard to understand, but if you look down at these two images, you can understand a lot better. So, first things first, have the base. Pretty simple. Then, you have the arches, so let's build those up. Then you're going to want to move over to this image. There's a lot of conflicting roofs on this building, which is why it was so hard to build. So, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to separate this into a few core parts. Make it easier for you. At the bottom, that's this part right here. Don't worry about the doors, we can add those later. Then you have the second part. I'm doing this in 3 different parts. 1, 2, 3. The second part you add is going to be pretty much the most complicated part you do. This is going to be all the details. For example, this will copy onto the other side. As you can see, it's a mirror image. Same thing with the front. So you're going to do another part up there. Everything in between. However, this one also has layering. You're going to want to make sure that you see that whenever you build it. Pretty simple once you understand what you're doing. Then you're going to want to build the third part. That's going to jut up a little bit. And then, dome. As you can see, if you look between that and that, they look pretty similar. Obviously, this one's a lot more detailed. I'm doing this with the mouse, so you can imagine why mine is not as detailed. Once you have the core structure down, then start adding details. Here's your door. Probably another door over here. What do you do for the flooring? Things like that. However, the goal of this video is not to make you instantly a building master. The goal of this video is to have you understand how to break down what you want to build into simple parts so that you can actually build it. Now let's say that you can't find just a normal image of what you want to make, like an architectural image. You can only find an image of the actual building. Don't worry. That's not a problem. So, as you can see here, I'm going to add another layer. This is a picture. However, this could be a little bit confusing. So, my rule of thumb is that unless you know what the back looks like, just copy the front. It has never let me down. Red might be a little bit too hard to see on this one, so we're going to use a bigger size. A different color. And also probably a bigger size than 1 pixel. Don't worry about it. So, as you can see here, blocking out the shapes. I find it a lot easier to do this in drawing program. If you have a piece of paper, you can do it on there too. Just keep fiddling around with it till it looks right. So, then, if you have overlapping shapes, like this one kind of has, what you're going to do is you're going to go in with another color. You're going to block it out. It's okay if it looks a bit messy. The whole point is that you've got it down. This one does not have a dome shape, so it'd probably be easier to recreate in Minecraft. So, what do you do once you're done with that? Get rid of the background. There are the simple shapes that you need to build in Minecraft. Don't worry about the details, you can add that on later. The first thing is having a good base. And see, we took a picture that you don't really know what to build, and we gave you something to do. However, if this isn't very helpful for you, you can take this further by trying to do a top-down view. Now that we know what this looks like, we can go over to a separate piece of paper. So, in the middle, it seems that we have a central column. Like I said, we don't know what the back looks like, so we're doubling the front. Then, have it looks to be this, and then on the sides, we're going to do that as well. Okay if it doesn't look good. This side is slightly taller than the other, so you might want to give that a little bit of overhang, or shade it in. Do something that will remind you that, oh yeah, this part's a little bit taller. Then you add this in. It looks like it's in a little bit more than that one is. So, what do? Simple. Make it look smaller. Since you don't know what's going on over here, double it to the back side. Does this look confusing? Yes. However, a top-down view is extremely helpful for some people, a lot more helpful than this. So, now that you have your floor plan, and your other floor plan, though it's not really floor plan done, you can take these shapes and you can put them into Minecraft. What I'd recommend is trying to find a similar angle to where the photo is, and put a few blocks there so you know where it is. If you're building in survival, it's going to be a lot more harder than it would be in creative, but that's just how building works. Put those blocks there, and you have the exact same angle, or as close as you can get, the angle of where the building was taken. If you have to dig it down a few blocks, do it. Then you're going to start placing your blocks. And this really depends on how big and how detailed you want your build to be. So, if you want a small build, there's some builds that you can't scale down that much. However, I think this one very much can be. For example, you could probably get this down to 3 blocks, that whole thing. But you'll have to scale the rest properly. What I find in this stage is that it's really just trial and error. If you want something smaller, for example, the bone chapel that I did based off of the image from earlier, I scaled it down dramatically. because I wanted something that could fit in a very particular spot in my world. And that is completely fine. Not everything you build has to be huge, massive, and detailed. If you think that everything you need to make needs to be something that you could see on Hermitcraft, you're never going to get any of your builds done. You have to be able to do your entire build and be able to look at it and go, maybe it's not the best thing that I could have done, but you did it. And that way you know what to do at the end of the build and at the beginning. You can't just start builds and then never finish them, because then you're not going to know what to do when you do finish one. So, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to build up. Don't worry about the roof. Add a really janky angle that you think's going to work. Then you move on to build this one. And this one. I would not worry about the center for a second. Take a step back. Does that look right in your world? If it does, continue. Build the center. Build the column off to the side and build this one. Then copy it to the other side. Something that's really useful when you're trying to copy from one side to another if you don't have Litematica is just taking a screenshot. That way you don't have to run back and forth. And once you're done with that, you can start adding the details. Block palettes are something that I'm going to cover in a completely different video. A lot of the times I don't take the block palettes that I see in the actual image. A lot of times I think these are kind of boring. Sorry, Byzantine architecture. You're pretty, but I want fantasy. So you're just going to want to do things that, for example, if you live somewhere that has a lot of one type of architecture, I would recommend moving out of that type of architecture. Try to find something that you don't see a lot where you live. Obviously, I don't see Byzantine architecture where I live. If you do, maybe try going with modern. Try going with castles. Try something that you don't see that often, something that you haven't built before, because that's going to push you out of your comfort zone, and that's going to make it a lot easier to build things, not only from memory if you want to try to do that, but also building things that maybe your friend wants a house in a particular style. It's going to make it a lot easier for you to build with friends who have a different style than you. It's going to make it a lot easier when you want to try and build something. And also just having that flexibility when building can help a lot. There's a lot of builds that I thought, I just can't make this work, and I gave up on them. However, if I had a little bit more flexibility back when I built those, maybe I could have made something really pretty. So, the first rule of building is, remember, not everything has to be pretty. Sometimes it can look bad, and you just have to live with it.